Yes. Ryan Clark here on the Rich Eisen Show. I mean, bravo, sir. 10 of 10, no notes.
Spoken from the heart.
No notes, Ryan. No notes at all.
Yeah, that wasn't my finest analyst moment, Rich. That was like I was sitting in the same room I'm sitting in right now, and I'm watching Joe Flacco be the Joe Flacco that took the Baltimore Ravens to the Super Bowl. And it made me think about like what Coach Tomlin said about GM Andrew Berry from the Cleveland Browns. He's like, well, he must be smarter than me. He understood that Joe Flacco still had something. And if you go back to week 1, he threw for 290 yards against the Cincinnati Bengals. And now you see him with Jamar Chase, obviously T. Higgins, and what he's able to do with that team since about the second half of that first game against Green Bay. Nobody's going to want to play this offense, but I'm just more upset that the Pittsburgh Steelers didn't take that next step. Coming into the season with Aaron Rodgers, I thought to myself, okay, this is a playoff team. And then now you see them with the down AFC North. The AFC as a conference is not as strong as we thought it would be. And to lay an egg like they did last night defensively is unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, when Flacco pulled the ball and ran it for 12 yards, I audibly screamed. I audibly screamed out loud. And I was surrounded by other people, Ryan. I love this reaction. I'm bringing you back.
Rich.
Here. I know.
Rich.
I get it.
I wanted to jump out of a first story window because I didn't really want to harm myself
First
that bad.
Yeah,
I just wanted to bruise it. So I didn't want like the full effect of what happened. But when that happens, like even Kirk Herbstreit is like, wait, Joe Flacco pulled the ball? You see the whole team went to tackle the running back because ain't no way that that's going to happen. The energy that offense played with because they now have hope is all because of a young, looking at least, Joe Flacco.
So what does this tell you about the Steelers defensively? Because, again, this is a team that gave up over 30 points to the Jets, who I was wondering where that Jet team was while I was sitting in a booth in Tottenham 5 days ago. I'm like, I was just begging for. By the way, you were thinking of a first story window. I was looking out of the booth thinking, how deep is this drop? You know what I mean? Like, so what does this say about the Steelers defense right now? Moving forward.
First off, I'm sure it's a deep enough drop to where you won't run the 40 very fast. So we can't have that. That's an important moment for a lot of people. So we need that to happen.
Thank you.
Here's what it says. It makes you look at that game against the Jets, Rich. It makes you go back to the game against the New England Patriots, where if you remember, there were 5 offensive turnovers that helped and allowed the Pittsburgh Steelers to win that game. But Drake May and the New England Patriots were able to move the ball. I felt like Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, found something in the pressure defensive packages we've seen on third downs or in passing situations, adding Patrick Queen to the rush, playing some man-to-man on the back end, using some disguise that's allowed them to get some one-on-ones. But last night, that was so difficult to do because of the matchups outside, which were supposed to be mitigated by adding a Darius Slay, by adding a Jalen Ramsey, and to a lesser effect, an Echoes that they acquired from the Jets. It was, from the X and O strategy standpoint, it was a whipping from Zach Taylor on Terrell Austin, but also when we're just speaking about players making plays, the Jamar Chases, the T. Higgins, the Yoshi Bosses, the Chase Browns, Noah Fant, they made more plays offensively than what we're used to seeing from the stars, like the TJ Watt, one of the highest paid players in the world, make. They didn't come up and show up in the most important.
NFL Week 6 latest buzz, questions, news, and fantasy tips October 8, 2025, 10:30 a.m. ET We're cruising into Week 6 of the 2025 NFL season. and insiders Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano have been making calls to sources around the league for the latest news and buzz on key situations. This week, they got the pulse of the Raiders after Geno Smith had another iffy game. He's now up to 9 interceptions on the season and hasn't delivered on the promise of Las Vegas off-season trade. Is the franchise concerned? On the flip side, Daniel Jones has wildly exceeded expectations in Indianapolis. But do people around the league think the Colts quarterback can sustain his early season success? Jeremy and Dan also break down what they're hearing on players who could get contract extensions over the next few months and coordinators who putting themselves in position to get head coaching job interviews in the off-season. It's all here, as our national reporters answer big questions and empty their notebooks heading into Week 6. Note: new updates are at the bottom. As of 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, jump to growing Smith concern belief in Jones extension candidates, rising coordinators. More notes for Week 6. Are the Raiders worried about Geno Smith's start to the season? Fowler: I would classify it as mildly concerned. The Raiders know Smith has to play better and soon, but there's no sentiment that Smith is a broken quarterback. So I'm not expecting him to get benched or anything this week. Scouts I have talked to believe Smith has been too late with the ball this season and is relying on arm talent to force throws into tight windows. On the flip side, the Raiders were without their top 2 tight ends, Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, and left tackle Colton Miller on Sunday against Indianapolis. And the receiver depth is not great overall. Also, his 2 picks against the Colts weren't blatantly bad decisions. The Colts appeared offside on one of them, resulting in a batted pass, and Smith said he threw to a spot where a receiver was supposed to sit against cover 2 coverage on the other. The situation is obviously not good, but as was pointed out to me by someone with the team, Raiders coach Pete Carroll and Smith have enough sweat equity together from their Seattle days that Carroll could stick with him a little longer as a result. Graziano: if the season spirals down the drain, could the Raiders look at Kenny Pickett? Possibly. That's what the Browns were trying to do before they drafted 2 quarterbacks, and Pickett got hurt in camp before landing in Las Vegas on a trade. But for now, it sounds like the Raiders will ride it out with Smith. What I'm hearing from a lot from people around the league is that offensive coordinator Chip Kelly's scheme isn't creating enough advantages to overcome the Raiders' personnel deficiencies, and there's no margin for error if Smith keeps turning the ball over as much as he has. What does Owa Gilman trade say for Ravens? Chargers. Mina Kimes breaks down the Ravens trading Odafe Owa to the Chargers for Alohi Gilman Fowler. The Raiders are operating in a weird space between rebuilding and trying to win now, and those 2 worlds appear in conflict. New general manager John Spytek took over a deficient roster and believes in building through the draft. That takes time. But Carroll, 74, was essentially a win-now hire. He doesn't have the personnel to do that in year 1 of this regime. The roster is lacking premier players, save for Bowers and edge rusher Max Crosby, particularly on defense. Smith was a sensible off-season quarterback acquisition for a team with scarce options in the draft. But he's quarterbacking a squad that might not be ready to win for another 2 seasons. Graziano: what's interesting to me is that the contract Smith signed with the Raiders after the trade doesn't really tie them to him beyond this year. He has an $18.5 million salary guarantee for 2026, after making $40 million this year. If the Raiders cut him after this season, they'd have paid him $58.5 million for 1, presumably disappointing, year. That's a lot, but as Jeremy said, this team wants to win soon. If absorbing $18.5 million in dead money next year to move on helps them do that, I doubt it would stand in the Raiders' way. What are people around the league saying about Daniel Jones' hot start? Are they believers? Graziano: most people I talk to believe Jones can continue to succeed in Shane Steichen's system if he stays healthy. He had turnover problems early in his career, but less so in later seasons with the Giants. And with RB Jonathan Taylor running the way he's running, a strong offensive line in front of him and Jones' own ability to create plays with his legs, there seems to be a belief that the infrastructure around Jones is solid enough to sustain again, assuming he stays healthy. It does feel a little bit like the 2022 Giants season when they went to the playoffs with Saquon Barkley running wild and Jones gutting out tough, low-scoring wins. Except the Colts aren't a low-scoring team. Fowler: Dan, the people I've talked to about Jones are buying the hype, though with slight apprehension. What's becoming clear with these reclamation QBs is that belief and confidence are powerful. Steichen is a skilled play caller with a deft quarterback touch who happens to believe wholeheartedly in Jones as a player and person. That carries a lot of weight and has helped Jones rebound. In New York, Jones was plagued by overthinking. He's playing more freely now. The Colts have helped him improve his footwork. And let's be honest, he's playing behind one of the best offensive line tailback combinations in the league. That's a huge aid to any quarterback. I know the Vikings were bummed to lose Jones, who has ideal size and a ton of tools, in the offseason after his short stint. Their editors Pierre Seacase reevaluating 32 bold NFL predictions, 5 weeks in, which are on target, and which deserve a do-over. Seth Walder NFL Week 6 Power Rankings, 1 to 32 team poll, plus the biggest fantasy surprise from every roster NFL nation. Could early bye weeks be a good thing? Why there's an advantage and how 6 teams are approaching them. Jeremy Fowler Graziano: yes, The way the Vikings season has begun makes one wonder whether they have some level of regret about losing him. But that's a story for another time. I think the best way to look at the Indianapolis situation is that Steichen seems to have a good sense of what Jones' strengths are and how best to lean into them while minimizing the impact of his weaknesses. There's an easy comparison to be made to what Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings were able to do with Sam Darnold last season, and I think that's the template. Of course, the hope would be for a stronger finish to the season than the one Darnold had. But if and when that time comes, it should help that Jones has some playoff experience, whereas Darnold did not. Fowler, there are a few areas of apprehension. Jones' deep ball is still a bit spotty. He is underthrowing some of those attempts, which resulted in a late-game interception in the Week 4 loss to the Rams. Alec Pierce's jump ball ability helps bail Jones out at times, but he has been out of the lineup because of concussion protocol. And there's plenty of time, 12 games, for a Jones gaffe that became a signature in New York to resurface in Indianapolis. Interceptions and fumbles were once part of the Jones experience. Can he prevent the turnover snowball when mistakes happen? The Colts believe he can.